across international borders. This is InGoal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, and Source for Sports Surrey. I'm your host, Darren Millard, with Kevin Woodley today as our dad, David Hutchison, sits back in the home office editing away. Woody and I will carry you through an interesting gear segment today as we head to Bauer World. Do you have any idea what that is? I don't, but it sounds really, really cool, and it's in a great location. Like, we're talking Miami, hotspot, lots of stuff going on. And we will also chat with Chris Osgood, a man that's on the bubble for the Hockey Hall of Fame, but a dude that's just really cool. He's always just shot from the hip with his opinion. He went from incredible junior player to Stanley Cup champion, and the journey has been a wild ride to now broadcaster and doing some youth coaching. And he does not hold anything back. It's a real privilege to be able to talk to Chris Osgood as we bring in the man they call Woody. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm kind of missing Dad here, although it's kind of our fault. You know, this is what happens when you leave me in charge of, you know, the technical side and collecting the audio. It gets a little glitchy. It wasn't perfect with Ozzy. I was just praying that Dad could fix it in production. Some of the parts where, you know, Ozzy's connection started to glitch on us, because like you said, like, that's easily shot to one of the top of the list for our best interviews yet. He was so good, so open, so many tips and insights. I don't care if you're like me, an old man beer leaguer, or a young kid listening. You can benefit from his experiences and the experiences he gained from playing with guys like Mike Vernon, for guys like Ken Holland, Scotty Bowman, with Dominik Hasek, and his openness and willing to share all those insights. The fight with Patrick Waugh. There is so much gold in this interview. I can't wait for our audience to hear it. And I just feel bad that we're making Hutch work late hours to clean up the production side of it, but it will be worth it.
You know what I got out of it as I was going to work after we did the interview and before coming back and recording this, was a real trip down memory lane with people that were somewhat of my era. But he mentions a lot of his old partners from junior, from minor hockey, and then into the National Hockey League. And we're talking like Neil Little, Blaine Locker, the Loch Ness Monster, played in Melville with the Millionaires. Osgood mentioned going to goalie school in Yorkton. That's where I went to goalie school with Reg Kachanowski and International Goaltender School. And Tim Chevelday was a goaltending coach there. Dooner. All the cool really cool guys that you looked up to as a kid. And then Chevelday, he was partners with in Detroit. It was a real experience for me as a former goaltender to kind of relive some of those names.
Well, and you mentioned the Hall of Fame earlier. Like, to me, this is not just because he's a guest. I've said it as a guest on other radio shows over the years. Like, he should be in. And it's not just the record and the fact that when he retired, he was easily in the top 10 in wins, over 400 in the NHL, 3 Stanley Cups, 2 as a starter, and the gap between them, 98 to 2008, between the second, or 97 to 2008, between the second and third Cups, and the work he did to reinvent his game during the lockout. And he got into that. Like, this was a guy who grew up just reacting. I mean, more to it than that, but not the sort of technical layers that we see in the modern butterfly game. And I'd actually written an in-depth feature with him and on him in the past about the transition he went through during the lockout with Stan from Bandits and working with Jimmy Bedard and trying to sort of modernize his technical approach. And, you know, I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact he did that, but then the success he had afterwards and, taking over the net from Dominik Hasek to win that third Stanley Cup with the Red Wings. And then, you know, things like scoring a goal, like I'd forgotten. Like, he was the second goaltender in the history of the league to shoot a puck into the other net. He's one of only 6 to score a goal. And not just be credited for it.
Yeah,
so
but also
just
the
so
stories
much.
About how when he didn't score a goal.
Right. Yeah,
there's some trying to score goals.
Yeah, we've got some good Babcock stories in here too as well from Ozzy. So it's going to be great. I can't wait to share it.
And again, he's blunt, entertaining, cool, a small goaltender, one of the few guys that benefited from a lockout he really, not maybe benefited is the wrong word, but took advantage of a lockout.
Yep.
And the Hall of Fame conversation, if he wins that back-to-back cups in 2008, 2009, if he wins that second cup against Pittsburgh, the one where Marc-Andre dove across the net and stopped Lidstrom, I'm confident that Chris Osgood would have been named Conn Smythe Trophy winner that year, and then it's a slam dunk. He's Conn Smythe Trophy winner, a 4-time Stanley Cup champion, 400 wins. It's a no-brainer. Now he's on the bubble. I'm with you, but the reality is he's bubble.
I get that, but to me, I mean, Fleury makes a good double push butterfly recovery. Like, we all know the save. What's that got to do with Ozzy? He did his job, like you said. Like that's
only because
the other guy made
win.
that last save. Yeah, I totally get it, and yet it shouldn't diminish what he did. And to me, it's a no-brainer. But hey, listen, whether that call comes, I hope it does. I think it should. Definitely a Hall of Fame interview, and one that I was just delighted to be a part of.
You're right. One save shouldn't either keep him out or let him in.
Yeah.
Like a save by somebody else.
Exactly.
So you've convinced me there. The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Surrey. Is anybody in the shop right now? Because it sounds like there's a party going on.
Yeah, there's a party going on in Miami, and Cam was invited. Bauer World, we're going to explain what that is. And I got to be honest with you, I've never been, but I've kind of, I'm at a loss sort of. My expectation for this, and I talk about it in the interview upcoming here, but was kind of a Stark Expo type thing. If you're a Marvel fan and Iron Man fan, like that type of just fantastic, like extravaganza world of goaltending. I keep hearing about this Bauer World. Maybe one day they'll trust me enough to invite me.
Okay, hold on, buddy. You've worked hard to get an invite here.
I am grinding
right now
this.
and in the gear segment that I listen to.
Hey, listen, it's in Miami. It's an undisclosed location, but I guarantee you it's close to some hot spots. I wouldn't mind going to Miami.
It's like Augusta National, where if you ask to join, you're never going to be allowed to join.
Yeah, maybe I've already blown it then, right? I'm done. No, but honestly, the good news is even when Cam is away, as we've demonstrated in the past, we could have gone out to the shop this week and had guys like Jono fill in quite admirably. That's one of the things, and another reason that I go to the Hockey Shop Source for Sports in Surrey, in the suburbs of Vancouver, for all my needs, all my gear, all my sharpening, the latest and greatest from all the top brands, as well as all the little details, whether it's parts for the mask, new cage, dangler, stink spray we talked about last week with a 20% offer, sticks, everything. They have it. They've also got a staff that knows the position, plays the position, lives and breathes the position, like Cam, like Jono, like me, like you, Darren, like our audience. They get it. And that's why you should go to the Hockey Shop Source for Sports. Or if you can't get there in person, you aren't lucky enough to live in the beautiful West Coast, you can get them at thehockeyshop.com. The good news is, even though Cam is away, and this is actually another side, another sort of tip in the cap, Cam is there not just as part of the Hockey Shop, but as a part of all National Source for Sports Group. His expertise within the industry is recognized, and so he's got a voice. He's got some sway within that buying group, and that's why he gets to go to events like Bauer World, which is where we caught up with him and Spencer Freer, who is the brand manager for goal department at Bauer. We managed to pull them out of a quote-unquote meeting. I think there might have been steak and dinner and maybe a drink involved. On the evening, I think the first full evening of Bauer World, to have them walk us through this secret extravaganza. We have a special edition of the Gear segment, brought to you by The Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com. It's not coming to you from The Hockey Shop this week. I always introduce that as a little slice of goalie heaven. I think we may actually be coming to you remotely from another slice of goalie heaven, something they call Bauer World. I gotta be honest, I haven't been invited, but we've got Cam Matwiff from The Hockey Shop on the line with us, along with Spencer Freer from Bauer, and they're gonna, without giving too much away, they're going to open up, they're going to pull back the curtain a little bit. Guys, like, what is Bauer World other than something you don't invite me to?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can't just give away all our secrets right away. Like, we just don't know if you can be trusted yet, Kevin. That's all.
That's probably a very wise decision on your part, to be honest with you. But so this is a big gathering of industry, one of the premier gathering of industries. Cam is there for the Hockey Shop, but also for Source for Sports. Can you guys just walk me through like what all goes on at this? Well, I mean the PG version of what all goes on at this in terms of, what's it like, Cam, walking into this? What are you seeing? New gear for the first time? I know you can't give away specifics on what the gear looks like just yet, but you're getting a full look at next year's lineup, I'm guessing?
It's pretty amazing to see, just Bauer as a whole, as a company, or what they put into this and how much they, care about their retailers and whatnot. This event's all about the retailers basically, and how our partnership can continue to grow. And it's been fantastic so far, and still got another couple more days to ride it all through.
Spencer, give me an idea of what we're like when they walk in. What are they looking at? This isn't just your average conference center, is it? What kind of things do you do? Are you walking them through behind the scenes, introducing to the guys who are building the gear, all the different programs?
Yeah, exactly. So this year we're down in Miami. So we basically bring all of our top retailers from all across the globe down to a remote location, kind of a secret gathering of all the hockey minds, and basically try to show them all the behind the scenes. So this year at Bauer World, we're showing everyone all of the new 2020 Supreme line for goalie, for player, basically everything that rolls up into a 2020 launch. And yeah, it's a look behind the scenes. It's what technology we have coming. It's how to sell sessions on the key talking points, what we're looking to get out there for everybody. But also like right now we're doing a product expo that everybody gets to walk around, touch and feel the product, but then they also get to meet with our Blainville R&D team and kind of walk through it. So Matt Supertois, our main developer, he's sitting there walking everyone through the product.
Okay, so Cam, you've been at a few of these in the past. Maybe you can speak to it. I've seen it obviously at the end product in terms of testing the equipment, obviously not the 2020, but up to this point. The evolution of this gear and getting a peek behind the curtain at the work that's gone into bringing Bauer from 1S, which was a very different product, all the way now up to next year's line, and getting to meet some of the guys behind it and some of the research and development that's got into it. What's that been like?
I wish I could speak for more, but I have to keep my lips pretty shut here. But put it this way, there's a lot of excitement here. A lot of excitement. There's some amazing things to come, and as a consumer that's hopefully listening to this, your average goalie, get excited. Be ready.
What about from just without giving away anything new, just seeing it over the years, how much R&D and how much work has gone into this evolution? Again, not just specifically next year, Spencer, but over the past 3 years. This stuff just doesn't appear out of thin air, all these new ideas and new concepts that you guys have brought to retail and brought to the industry since 1S.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that we really try to pride ourselves on, is definitely our R&D and everything that can go into that. And it definitely takes time. We really pride ourselves on how we bring product to life, and that's through field testing. So thousands of hours of product being on the ice through R&D and through field testing, making sure that everything is just right, whether it's putting it in the freezer and then getting on the ice to simulate a bus test, or we're doing skate cut testing, or we're doing drop testing for impact. There's so much time and effort that goes into this. The 2020 Supreme line has been in the works for basically since 2 weeks before. We always try to time it. We always talk about it. You're only a few weeks out from the 2S Pro launch, and then we were already talking and already moving towards on the new 2020 line. So there's always things that are moving and always trying to understand and try to get better. And that's something I think separates us a little bit from our competition, as we really try to pride ourselves with our world-class R&D.
So Cam's getting a sneak peek at all the goodies for next year. Is there any ice involved, or is the only ice in the drinks down there in Miami?
The only ice is definitely in the drinks at the moment, but Cam's already been bothering me to get himself a set. Every time he puts a set on, he asks when I can ship it to him. So we'll make sure that Cam gets a set soon. So I'm sure you'll get your eyes on that as well.
So carpet flies for now only, Cam? Just carpet flies for now?
Yeah. Hey, you heard it here. It's a thing now. We've got them on record. So I guess I'm all in for this one.
Okay, so now I need you guys just to leave our guests with a picture, because I've always heard about Bauer World, this big thing. I kind of, we see sort of presentations like Apple when they roll out new product, or like what's this like? Or I'm thinking like there's part of me that's kind of like geeking out here. Like, is this like Tony Stark's exhibition where everybody walks in and sees all the latest and greatest, and there's Iron Man suits flying all over the place? Like, paint a picture for me what this is like when you walk into this thing.
Yeah, so basically what we try to do is we try to almost kind of recreate that Steve Jobs moment, that it is a very large room that we basically set up in a theater style with a very large screen and a stage, and we walk through the main technologies and the stories coming this year. But then what we do is we break out the entire group. So the group is made up of about 300 to 400 people. We break them all out into their own group, and then we do individual product sessions where they do one-on-ones with us, the brand managers. So for instance, we started the morning off with the U.S. specialty group. So the U.S. specialty group came in. There was about 90 people in the room, and we basically walk through and we do a much more in-depth on the product. And then in the evenings we have dinner, and then everybody walks through an expo style. Then it's completely touch and feel. Check everything out and see what everybody thinks.
Have you let Cam try True Design yet? Like, have you given him a set of crayons and seen what he can create yet, or is that probably a little beyond him?
Well, it breaks my heart a little bit when I have to see that his number 5 set is for sale. That hurts a little bit. So I don't know if we're going to go down the road of getting him his own set, but we'll have to play it by ear.
Hey, listen, we put that one on Instagram. For those that don't know, that is the vintage Canucks black gold spaghetti skate jersey going downhill set that they have at the hockey shop out there in Surrey. And we teased that it might be going on sale with the number 5 orange stitching on the side. I got to say, guys, the response we got to that on Instagram, like I've had a lot of the DMs asking me like when and where is that thing going on sale. So I think that True Design, we've seen another, a couple more sets. Linus Ullmark today with an absolute beauty for the Sabres 50th. How big, just last one, Spencer, how big has that been for you guys this year? Launching that, we see all these great designs at Pro and NCAA and the CHL, but what about a retail? What about for Joe Blow like you and me to be able to get into that designer and create our own gear? What's the feedback been on that?
Yeah, it's been great, and we have 2 amazing designers. We have Matthew Abraham, and then we have Jan as well. So Jan works internally at Bauer, and Mash is kind of a freelance on his own that works and contracted with Bauer. And you know what? They've both been absolutely unbelievable and been able to do their own thing when it comes to the design. It's almost taken its own kind of life when it almost turns into a mask painting. You know what I mean? It becomes very personal, very, very, very detail oriented, and the small little fine detail stuff I think is where DigiPrint separates itself. You've seen some of the sets for Alaska University or University of Alberta or anything like that. The fine detail that can be in there that's not just cut and sew. There's a lot to be said that starts to separate itself.
Okay, boys. Well, I appreciate you guys joining us for this very special remote edition of the Gear segment brought to you by the Hockey Shop, source for sports, and thehockeyshop.com. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little jealous, but I don't want to keep you from the festivities much longer, boys. Enjoy Miami, but not to the point of an international incident. And Cam, we'll see you back at the shop next week.
We'll see you then, Kevin.
Thanks, Spencer. Thanks, Cam.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll talk to you soon.
Nice of you to let them get back to work.
Yeah, work, quote unquote. I'm not so sure. Now you see why I'm striving so hard for the invite, eh? You got pushing for that one.
I know. I think there should be, I don't know, draw straws from the InGoal Radio, the podcast, to see who gets to go. Because Dad right now is sitting back going, I'm doing a lot of this grunt work. I should be at Bauer World.
I think it sounds like basically from what I've heard of Bauer World, it may require a 3-man wolf pack. All of us got to go.
Well, we have to take Dad because we've already ditched him from our Vegas trip. So he's already mad at us. Hey, did you say dangler that you're wearing a dangler when you were introing the gear segment?
I mentioned the word dangler as something you can get at the hockey shop.
Okay,
unfortunately,
so
no, Darren. No, I haven't yet converted to the smart and the safe. I'm still the dumb and the bruised.
I also want to admit that now being a person that's being paid in US dollars, living in the United States, the hockeyshop.com is a really good website to be ordering my gear from, because I'm taking advantage of it. It's very positive.
We've talked about that before. There are a couple of brands that can't travel across the border, rules about shipping for CCM and Bauer. But pretty much everything else from the hockeyshop.com, that'll cross the border and you'll save yourself the extra. I think it's about 32%, depending on your bank, in terms of the US dollar being worth more up here in Canada. And yeah, absolutely. We encourage people to take advantage of that. They're pretty close to a border themselves, so they have no problem getting it shipped across and to you in prompt order.
Okay, to our feature interview and Chris Osgood. How long have you known the man that we refer to as Ozzy?
Oh, well, I mean, probably 03, 04, around that era. So kind of just before the transformation he talked about in the lockout. That was, I started covering the league in 2000 and I started really digging in on goaltenders around 03. So that's when I started becoming that annoying guy that asked him all these extra questions. And he was always gracious with his response and sort of listening and explaining. And so I'm not surprised he's made such a smooth transition to media and to working on the media side of things since his retirement. And I'm not surprised. He was a great interview today.
Yeah, it's fun. I first came in contact with him when he was a junior at Medicine Hat. He was partners with Cam Moon, the play-by-play man of the Red Deer Rebels, former Saskatoon Blade as well. And then he was traded and did a brief stint in Brandon. And I still don't know why Brandon and Kelly McCrimmon acquired him, but they did. And I was lucky enough to acquire his Wee King jersey. So I still have that as part of my collection. So I've kind of followed his career because, one, he's a great goaltender, and two, because I had that sweater. And when we finally got to know him a little bit, he's not gruff, but he's honest. And he's a really unique individual to get to know, because he will share things with you, and he's not shy about sharing things, as you will get to know and learn from the man that once scored a goal in the National Hockey League and won 3 Stanley Cups. Opportunity to speak to Chris Osgood, who has been a top prospect, a National Hockey League goaltender, now a broadcaster, a little bit of coaching on the side. What do you consider yourself right now? If you walked up to somebody and had to do one of those team building things and explained what you do, how do you describe it, Ozzy?
What do I do? I don't think I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have some knowledge in especially goaltending for young kids. Just the mental side of it, how to deal with stuff when it doesn't go right. I can, give some insight too on, what you need to do off the ice, away from the rink, to get yourself ready as a player, and what it takes the National Hockey League level to not only get there, but to stay there. It's real difficult. How to set expectations, not only in just goaltending, but in life in general. The willingness to try new things. Even temp stuff you might be fearful of doing. Just the ability, just to give kids confidence to go out and play and have the mindset to go out and realizing that if they work hard, listen, never give up, that things in the end are going to work out regardless of which direction you're going in.
Why did you start playing goal?
Full time when I was 11, my first year Pee Wee. So 10 turning 11. My brother and I actually switched on and off up until then. He was actually better than I was when we were younger. We were both defensemen. Team had no goalies. That was back when your coach would bring the box of jerseys to your house and you got to pick whichever ones were left, depending on what the route of the who lived closer to the coach. And by the end, sometimes there's only 4 to pick from, so you didn't have a lot of numbers to choose. So my brother and I usually got what was in the bottom, and nobody wanted to play goal, so him and I would grab the equipment and we'd switch every game. And then if we weren't playing goalie, the other guy would play out. Then he was better than I was, and then he actually passed. He was a better defenseman, so I ended up staying in net in Pee Wee, and then that was really my first year playing full-time goalie. And my first game full-time, I had goalie skates on. Could barely stand up. Pads were on the wrong legs. Didn't go too good. We lost like 10-1. Lots of tears that game. But that was the start of a goalie career. So I remember at the Moose Recreation Center in Medicine Hat.
That's fantastic. Hey, I still have games like that. Well, actually, most of my games end up like that, Ozzy. So that's good to hear that there is a future for me, even at 46. I might have the odd good one still. Junior, you have a great junior career. At what point in that path did goaltending and hockey become something you thought about as a potential career?
I would say my first year midget. We had good teams, but midget was when you're kind of affiliated with the junior team. And Blaine Locker, who played in Boston, Neil Little, who won an AHL championship with the Phantoms, and still good friends with these guys. And he played a couple games for the Flyers. It was us three trying out for our teams all the time in Medicine Hat, and which is kind of incredible that a town that size would have three
That's
goalies
wild.
that would make it. And so Blaine was always older. Coach decided to go with the younger guy, which was me. So, a lot of luck, a lot of chance goes into this too as you go along. You got to take advantage of your opportunities that you get. In midget, it was the first year that I was playing midget that I thought, and then you get protected and also with juniors. So then you kind of think, maybe I'm going to try and go far with this. So that was kind of when I first got real serious about being a goalie. Was my first year midget where I realized, I had to start doing some extra stuff, and I really got into it at that point in time.
And what was the thing that you adopted? Was it off-ice training? Was it going to goalie schools? Was it?
Yeah, back then it was going to goalie school. You'd usually go to a hockey school, and the goalie would go in. And I remember Tigers, we had like Mark Fitzpatrick would be out there, Troy Gamble would be out there. And, the goalies would get some attention, but you're more or less just a target at a hockey school with a bunch of players. So then it was like, okay, now we're going to get serious. And my parents would send me to Yorkton goalie school. That was kind of at that point in the 80s, that was a big deal. If you were a goalie, strictly just going to a goalie camp, because there's really no goalie coaches or there wasn't a heck of a lot out there that anybody specialized in goalies. At that point, just going to goalie schools and really focusing in, just playing a heck of a lot more. Now, I didn't really train to be a goalie then. It was just more or less just more ice time, more individualized training, as much as you could get then.
So you get drafted by the Red Wings, Chris, and I'm just trying to do the math here on, obviously we've seen and we know how special that relationship is with Ken Holland. He wasn't GM until 97. So 91, when you get drafted by the Red Wings, he's a scout at that point, or a chief scout at that point with the Red Wings?
Yeah,
is that where that started?
He was a Western scout first, and then he became the chief scout running the draft. I remember at Medicine, he was always on the rail. And we ended up playing left bridge, was James McCullen Noodles was the other goalie. But that's kind of where I knew him from when I was 15, so he followed me playing midget, because he was what's called, you hear the saying rink rat, but Ken Holland really was in rinks nonstop in Medicine Hat and in the junior circuit. So you'd always see the rail in Medicine Hat. So you'd always try and play better. Everybody knew he was a scout for the Red Wings, and then he was running the draft. So, I didn't even really know I was going to get drafted by Detroit. I knew he was following me, but you never really know, and you hear stuff. But I do remember, I think we played a game against Swift Current, and it was on TV. That's when TSN would show one game a week or something like that. And I had a pretty good game. I remember after that people were talking about he might get drafted. So that was really the first time. I never really thought about it that much. But Ken Holland was one of those guys. It was good that I had him. He was a mentor away from the ice for me. When you're 16, 17, you need some direction, really, other than on the ice, but off. Just working hard, and with a trainer, me and Neil Little, and kind of made sure we were there on time and we were doing the right thing. And in a small town, unbeknownst to us, but knowing now, he hears what you're doing all the time. So he was honest about showing up on time for workouts, and he really was the driving force and leading me in the right direction, just to give me a chance and put the pieces in place, which would give me an opportunity to possibly get drafted and make it.
Did he continue to be a mentor when you broke into the National Hockey League? And because you had personalities like Scotty and Mike Vernon, that's not easy to forge relationships and establish yourself.
Yeah, he always had advice for me, good or bad. I mean, I remember one year I could have went on the ice more in the summer. I didn't. I think it was my second year. I didn't have a good training camp. Came back to the hotel. That year-old hotel late was going on, the red light there.
Yeah. For
cell phones are really relevant. And whenever that red light was going on in training camp, that wasn't a good thing for the most part, 9 times out of 10. So, more or less gave me a lecture for quite a while on my hotel phone. Straighten out, you have to start doing this and committing yourself and being focused. And so, that was good. I remember that. And it was a good lesson for me, thinking that I could just step on the ice and perform. And that wasn't the case. I had to do a lot of other things to make yourself successful that I was, slacking off in. And, he kind of put me on notice, and it was good. So he was, he never let me, whenever I was veering off the tracks, he'd get me back on. So, and everybody needs somebody like that when they're younger. So it was important for sure. Surely a big factor of why I made it and had the opportunity to play in the National Hockey League.
Scotty, what was he like?
Well, Scotty was great. Scotty, he taught me attention to detail. Kenny did too, but differently. Then if you won a game 5-4, you're more or less you're fine with that. Or if it was 4-3, or I grew up watching Grant Fuhr play, so
right
4 but make big saves in the end, 7-6 but play great in the end, kind of thing. That's what I was used to watching and seeing. That's what I always that was hockey in Canada. So Scotty, I let some late goals in if it was 1 or 5-1, and I always thought, oh, it's all right, it was 1-5-3, but he taught me, it's not okay. You have to pay attention to detail even in the games when it's 5-1 in January, because in the playoffs, when it matters most, you're going to have trained yourself mentally and physically to be ready for those situations. So, really learn that even when it was 4-1, to still be on top of your game, always strive for excellence and play your best always, and never let your guard down. I mean, I think that was the thing, just being ready to play and finishing games. Those are the 2 things he really taught me.
March 6th, 1996, against the Hartford Whalers. Tell me how it happened.
Mm-hmm. I remember, I recall this here. Glenn Wesley, I believe it was. Is that right? Dumped it in. And now the funny thing is, the current in when I was in Medicine Hat, Jeff Sanderson was on for that goal. I believe he's on for this one too. So he's actually on for both of my goals, only goals. And Wesley dumped it in, and I told Drapes for the game that I was going to go for it, and I was going to score tonight. And Drapes was injured, so he wasn't playing, and he was in the old press box in Hartford. Came down, walked down, and as he was walking down, however you get there, I don't no idea. I ended up scoring. So Wesley dumped it in, kind of veered to my left, put my stick on the ice, and got it. And I had quite a bit of time, but I almost hit Nick Lindstrom right in the head, I believe, right, and he had a duck. And I pretty much hit around just past center and went right in the middle. And then Drapes came down. He was in the corner, and he's asking me if I'd scored, because back then, there was no replays really. I mean, there's some, but not a heck of a lot. And first he didn't believe me. I'm like, no, Drapes, seriously, I scored. So he wouldn't believe me. So that was it. But I remember Jeff Sanderson said, I don't know if he told me or somebody else told me that, hey, you realize I was on for both these goals. And he's kind of like, that's unbelievable coincidence. So all those years later.
You called your shot.
But, well, I guess. I guess I did.
Now, was puck handling? I mean, obviously you said you scored in junior as well. Was puck handling nowadays? I mean, it's almost a prerequisite. You have to have some ability to handle the puck. Not everybody has to be Mike Smith, but you got to be able to move it and set up your D and keep them safe. Back then, not so much. Was that something that you prided yourself on, or sounds like you were ahead of the curve on it?
I remember, well, once again, you're fortunate who you meet. So it was a scout, Reg Porter, and it wasn't Brian Kennedy. He was the coach of Madison Tigers then. And Ron Hextall was playing Brandon, so I always saw Ron Hextall play. So, and when you're a goalie, you watch other goalies. So, and Ron Hextall was my favorite guy as a junior. Brendan have a great team, but he was always real good. And he just played the puck a lot. So I emulated him and tried to be like him. And Reg Porter was a scout for Massachusetts. They wanted me to play the puck from a young age because in midget, you're kind of like the farm team for the junior team. So when I was 14, 15, 16, and wow, a lot of mistakes, tons that people had to live with. But, no fault of trying. There's the only way you can get any better then. And I was just committed to this, trying to be as good as I could with it. And I remember in Vancouver, I just was on the road in Vancouver doing a game, as you know, and Ken Cal was telling a story when I told him I was going to score that night against Vancouver. So same thing. And they actually dumped it in, and I had tons of time, and I flubbed the puck and created such a kerfuffle in our end for the next minute. And Babcock was so mad at me. I remember, so it can go both ways in a hurry. And I remember it was only by fluke that it didn't go in. They actually scored, but the whistle went. So dodged one there, but it can go both ways. Mike Smith's been cut out 2 or 3 times this year. But to me, watching him, I can't remember they were playing. The goalie was pulled. I mean, he was single-handedly. They couldn't get the puck for the last minute and a half because of his puck playing. So, I mean, you live by the sword, you die by the sword sometimes. But as a goaltender playing the puck, a massive advantage. You talk about New Jersey's defense all those years. Niedermeyer, Stevens, Danico, God, they had great defensemen there. Petizov was there for a while too. But Murray Burr playing the puck is a huge, huge deal for that defense too. And it made them even better. So difficult to get dumps, difficult to get end zone time when a goalie and a defense are paired up like that and have the continuity that they did.
What did Babcock say to you that night?
Nothing. You can just tell when he's mad. But I was older, so I was like, oh well. I wasn't really too concerned about it, but it was close. I mean, it would have been. It was like it came off my stick like a 6-degree wedge, almost like straight up flubbed it. From that point on, it just became a complete kerfuffle. Lucky to get out of it, but you laugh after. But still, I think it's more important than it ever has been because you can't hold up. But you got to be real quick. You got to be decisive. They don't have as much time as we did because you could hold guys up, you could clutch and grab. You could go out and fake like you're going to touch it on icing. You get the trapezoid now, which I wish they'd get rid of. It doesn't have any purpose anymore. You're really taking away a goalie's something. You're taking away something the guy might actually sign somewhere for being better at playing the puck, and you're taking that away from somebody. It's crazy. But for me, as you go along and watch Edmonton, you're going to know what a huge difference that's going to make in the end.
Ozzy, what was your best skill or attribute when you were younger, and did it change when you got older?
Well, because I watched Grant Fuhr, and you always have to be adjusting. As always, regardless of the score, was winning the game in the end, and it did that in midget, did it in junior. You don't always win, but making big saves the last 10 minutes. Don't play great every big game, but for the most part, trying to play really well in all the big games. And sometimes you get, then you go on the flip side of that, where sometimes when the games don't mean as much, you don't do as well, and that kind of becomes not acceptable in the new era of hockey, right? So, but just the ability to play good in big games and make the saves when I had to, and just bouncing back if I let in a bad goal. I always was like that. And that was from watching Grant Fuhr, just even Mike Vernon for that matter, getting to play with him. I mean, he was the same way. He'd always say, why care about what already happened? Just keep playing, keep battling. Don't worry about it. So I was real fortunate that I had a chance to play with a lot of good guys too. I mean, that was another lucky break for me, as I got to play with Tim Shovelday. Talk about perseverance. Well, he had tons. Vincent Riendo, got to play with him, got to play with Mike Vernon, Dominik Hasek. I got to play with a lot of legendary guys that I watched growing up. Bob Ascenz I got to play with. I watched him play in Winnipeg. So for me, there wasn't any point in time that I ever played with a guy that was really younger than me, other than maybe Kevin Hodgson. until the end was Jimmy Howard. But I was always had somebody with me that was kind of a mentor to me, which was real important.
Sorry, I was going to say, we'll get to Hasek in a bit, but I wanted to start with Vernon. Like, those 2 cups back-to-back, you watched the first one. What did you learn from him? Mm-hmm. Was there anything that you took out of watching the first one that allowed you to be ready to be the guy in the second?
Yeah, well, we roomed together the whole time that year. That's back when you had to have you had a roommate on the road. So I roomed with Vernie the whole time. Just, how, the stuff you talk to him, just how he stayed even keel the whole time. There's games where San Jose, I believe in the first round, he wasn't needed a lot, but he still played real well. And then we ended up playing against Colorado, and that's when he really played well. But he never changed his demeanor ever. He was the same guy, the same person before every game. It wasn't like all of a sudden we were playing Colorado and it was going to be a tougher series, and he was all worked up and or nervous. Or he was the exact same guy in the finals against Philly as he was in game 1 against San Jose. So to me, it was a real lesson, just, to stay even keel, regardless of building you're in, who you're playing against. Is just, you just worry about what he was doing, and he just played. And I found that real important, just to sit back and watch that. And then even the year before when we lost to New Jersey, I mean, it didn't go well in the final, but it wasn't as if he ever changed the way he was playing or his demeanor on or off the ice, and just stayed confident and held his head up and just kept battling. And it was real impressive. I mean, it's something you can sit back and watch, and sometimes you don't have to say anything to each other, just to sit there and learn. So, I mean, that was real important for me going to the next year for sure.
Okay, now the last cup you won with the Wings, I mean, we move on a full, you got Hasek there with you, but in between those two, you made some changes to your game. Can you talk about the evolution, I guess, not just of yourself, but of the position and how you evolved with it between, in those, I mean, there were a couple teams in between as well, but in that gap between those last 2 cups?
Yeah, I didn't really change too much when I was with the Islanders. You just don't have the time to. You can do some work in the summer, but I didn't really have the opportunity to do it, nor was that style was just coming in. It wasn't where, we're used to challenging and a lot of times over challenging, get caught out of the net on a 2-on-1. Then when I went to St. Louis, a little bit, but not a lot. And then there was lockout. And that's when I changed my game. And I'm like, well, okay, if I want to make some changes and take what I do already well and mix it with what's going to make me more successful with the new stuff, that's sliding, blocking, you're on your knees and the pushes. And it was hard for me, and took a while. I mean, I would go on the ice doing a lockout 3 times a week at first with no shooters, just to get all these moves down. It was a lot of repetition, a lot of just doing it over and over and over again. It took me quite a while. And then you go from that stage to, okay, now there's shooters on the ice. Well, now do it when there's pucks being shot at you. And that's a totally different aspect of it. Really struggled a lot of times, looking at yourself to make sure you do the move right. Well, meanwhile, the puck's flying by in practice. So I got to a point where, I practiced a ton at it and really tried to change the way I played, not as much out as I used to, where you're over challenging back in kind of the 80s, 90s styles mixed together. And then the season started, and it was tough in games because you're overthinking, but my body's telling me to still do the old diving stuff, and like the old where Chris Osgood would dive across the game and get it in his glove, that kind of save, which now is obsolete. And these guys can shoot better, they can move the puck faster. So I got to be bum chest up on my knees. In my butterfly's got to be wider, but I got to be able to move around on my knees and be a good blocker while I have my hands up, and a lot of other things. So it didn't really. That first year was tough. I don't know my stats were. They weren't very good. And I remember a game in Edmonton, they had a power play and they passed D to D. I think he won by, but I dove across like I would when I first started. My hands first and hit my. I was later. I'm like, why would you do that? Because I knew I wasn't supposed to, but I was still trying to train my body to do that, and in a game. So it took about a year, 2 years. It took practicing for a year and playing for a year. And then by the next year, I trained my mind where it just naturally started happening. So it took a while. It wasn't easy. I mean, it was there was some frustration, and it was hard. But I knew I had to do it in order to play. So there's some gratifying moments. I remember I played. I think it was in Colorado against the Avalanche, where I was pushing around, making back-to-back saves, and then 2 days later, I dive across the net. And so it was a lot of ebbs and flows to it, but eventually I got it down, and I think it enabled me to play a lot longer, but it also helped me for the fact that I stood up for a lot of my career for half of it. So that's probably another thing that enabled me to play longer, where I wasn't on my knees with so much stress on my hips and my knees like these guys have nowadays. So I was kind of in between, a hybrid, half stand-up, half blocker, butterflyer. And it took a while to get there, though.
Who did you trust during that lockout to put you through that transition when you went on the ice by yourself, or were you self-taught?
Well, Jim Bedard, I had a goal. Jim Bedard was from Niagara Falls, so obviously he was still working. He had to do a lot of stuff. He had to scout. He had to. Back then, the goalie coach also scouted. He's with the Grand Rapids team with those guys, so he had a lot of work too. So I had to get a goalie coach who's Stanley Cup here, and slowly started doing it, and used him and used Jimmy Bedard. I mean, I was never one of those guys that just used one goalie coach like a lot of these guys do now. I always liked a lot of different guys, or listened to a lot of people because they had different opinions, and I take what worked. And that was the same as watching guys. I learned from my stick on ice by watching Ed Belfour, which I thought in that time was one of the most brilliant moves ever. When you think about it, a lot of guys would stand up on the post, guys would wrap around, it would go in. How many goals you saw like that in the 80s and early 90s? Well, Ed Belfour would put a stick on the ice. Take Patrick Waugh's butterfly, and then you take a lot of different guys had a lot of different moves that you watch. You take that. So I use the goalie coaches the same way. You would use them. You don't like everything they say, or you don't agree with it, but there's always something there you can take, and be open-minded with everybody that you work with. So, but Jim Bedard was the most influential, probably, because he was the guy that always stuck by me. Even when I was doing the dives and still stuck in my old ways, just go on the ice. And it was sometimes just with him going on for a half hour on a Sunday morning or a Saturday, just him and I. He put a lot of time into me, just doing the moves, pushing slow. It was all about the goalie, not with players shooting. So it was a lot of behind the scenes work. And these guys all do it now. I mean, all the time, but back then you really didn't. So it was just probably Jim Bedard. Ken Holland was always had my back because he knew what I was doing, going the right direction. Everybody doesn't know all the time. So probably Ken Holland, Jim Bedard, Stan McTwibb on the ice for sure helped me while I was in that transition. But when you get to the NHL, you need guys backing you while you're doing that. And it was Jim Bedard and Ken Holland for sure.
Who taught you how to chart faceoffs and keep tracks of shots on the bench?
That job is the stupidest job for a goalie ever. And Mike Babcock made it up, but I'll say now because I'm 47, that is a waste of time. It's like how many guys they got in the video room now? 4?
At least. Yeah.
Yeah, they can do that. There you go. They can do that. They're good at that. That's what they're there for. I'm there for stop the puck.
Ever have any near-death experiences because you had a clipboard in your hand as opposed to a glove?
In Calgary, I almost got killed. Face off right in the face-off circle. I was standing beside Paul Bauer. And went back to the defenseman, I think they were short-handed. He went to dump it in. It ricocheted off somebody's stick. It just missed my head by maybe a foot. I was done with it. I would purposely do him wrong so I didn't have to do him. I purposely do him wrong.
You and I had that conversation privately one time, and I told Woody, I said, I have to bring this up just for the pure entertainment part of it.
I purposely do him wrong and purposely put the wrong numbers on, so I didn't have to do it. I know that sounds bad, but it's the person that invented the fact that the goalie had to do the face-offs for starters. That's wrong. Put it that way. I think every single goalie, all 64, because there's 32 teams next year, right?
Yeah. You're right.
So I'm in the goalies union, not the coaches union. So there you go.
That's good. We'll send you. We're going to relaminate that goalie union card for you after this one. I wanted to ask you real quick though, Ozzy, about Hasek. We talked to you. You were talking about influences, and obviously you mentioned Stan from Bandits and Jim Bedard, who was such a huge influence, and Kenny Holland. What about playing partners? You've talked about some of the other guys. Dom comes in, and are there takeaways there? He was so unique in his approach. What were some of the things, if anything, that you could take, if not from his game, then from his mental approach? What were the positives? What did you take out of it for yourself?
Well, I play with guys that, and I wasn't one of them, that mentally strained themselves afternoon before playing a game. And by the time the game started, they were exhausted, just mentally exhausted. And Dom,
the opposite. Dom's relaxed. You wouldn't even know he's playing until he goes on the ice, and then he's all in. And his work ethic is what made him. He saw the game as a goalie. I said, like Wayne Gretzky sees the game as a player. That's how he saw the game. He could do stuff 95% of the goalies that ever played couldn't do, because he saw the game in a different way. But besides that, that's fair to say that. But without his work ethic, that never comes to fruition. He worked so hard. I remember we lost a shootout. I can't remember again. But he put all the pucks at center. Him and I went in, and I think Eisner was shooting. We had to stop every puck. If we did let it in, the puck went back to center. If we stopped it, it went to the corner. So we had to stop every one. There had to be 80 pucks out there, maybe more. So we'd switch every 2 or every 1, and we go into God because we lost in a shootout. So he was, and in practice, you know, when we grew up, you stood up and practice. I mean, if it went in, you can move on to the next one. Well, he would try to stop every single shot in practice, and it was real fortunate for me. I got a chance to play with him. He made me better 100%. And he makes you work in practice because you're watching with their end. You don't want to be upstaged. You want to be embarrassed. Like, oh, no, you want to be doing as well as him. And he'd work so hard in practice, and he'd be so mad if you let in a goal that he wasn't happy with. And, you know, you start doing that yourself. So when I went in 2008, I was ready. I mean, and if he wouldn't have been there, you're sitting on the bench. Yeah, you're there and you think you're ready, but you're really not. You need to put in the work. Play. I remember Jim had already ready. I said, yeah, I'm over it. I'm 100% ready. I wasn't nervous to go in. I wasn't worried about going in. I wanted to go in. And it was because of the work that we put in practice and everything we had done prior to that even happening. I had no idea I was going in. I had no clue. So it was one of those things where just being around him makes you work harder. And just his demeanor, you know, he'd be in the dressing room talking to me about everything from what's going on next week to ballers, saw everything. And then all of a sudden he'd stand up, hit his pads and go out and play unbelievable. And he'd be just dialed right in. So it was kind of like he relaxed his mind before he went out and played. So he had his 100% mental capacity and went and played to focus on the puck. So it was cool playing with him. I mean, you hear stories about him, but I was real fortunate I got a chance to be around him.
Woody and I both have one question that we want to ask you. I'll go first, and then Woody will ask his, and then we're done. You wore the bird cage. If you wore a fiberglass mask or the cage and mask combo, what would you have put on your mask? What would you have painted on it? Your design?
I would Wizard of Oz probably, or
that would have.
Or I would have put like something with Medicine Hat. I would have put something with Detroit. But then I would have joked around and put like a grind line on there, a picture of Drapes. But every time I tried to wear a mask, these guys abused me and ridiculed me so bad in practice I couldn't wear it. And
what do you mean?
Yeah, every time I had guys make me masks. I had like 3 masks. A couple of them were really cool, and I'd wear them in practice. I'm like, okay, this is the time I'm going to transition over. I'm going to change because obviously the protection isn't the same as the mask is. And I remember Weber hit me with a shot through a screen late in the game against Nashville. Like we were up 4-1 and it stung me. So like, that's it. I'm changing. And I couldn't do it. They were all over me in practice. And then they'd be joking around and it was.
Hold on. Peer pressure?
Yeah, it got to me. It was the peer pressure that got to me. It was the comfort. It was way more comfortable for me, and I could see out of it way better. Right. Those were the 2 things that I couldn't go with. The fact that I could see out of it way better. I could see down. I could see to the side a lot better than I could with the mask.
Wow, now we're gonna have to ask you to dig up some pictures of those masks that never made it to the public. In these days, if you even stepped out in practice, they'd be all over the internet. But if you got any of those photos, you're gonna have to share them with us. Last one for me, Ozzy, is that legendary, that rivalry, the blood feud, I think is what they called it with the Avalanche. We all know sort of some of the history and the hits that led to it. But what was it like to be in the middle of that and walk me through the Patrick Waugh fight?
Those games, you always circle those games on your calendar. Those are great games. You know, what made it is because both teams were so great. I mean, both teams were trying to win at the same time, and would do anything. And both teams had their superstars. They had their role players. They had their in the trench guys. They had their guys that could fight. Pretty much dead even. I never expected to fight. I mean, I know Vernie did the year before, and he was exhausted. So I was never set out to fight. I never thought about it. It just kind of happened.
Had you fought before?
No, I fought in midget once. I was in 11th grade. I didn't go to school the next day because I had 2 black eyes. So I was not very well put. I wasn't well trained in fighting, other than watching guys like the great Bob Probert fight and McCarty. So I actually, when I started fighting, and he came out pretty aggressive, so he, took our helmets off because nobody wants to break your hands. But I thought I'd start out with lefts only because that's what I saw McCarty do all the time. And it was more or less very, very soft punches just to try and set up a right. That really never happened. And then it became more of a wrestling match. And I got to tell you, when you're wearing all the goalie gear and you're not used to it, you get tired in a hurry, real fast. And they wrestle around. But I just remember Scotty Bowman being so mad. He was by the bench yelling at Patrick Waugh and yelling. And I've got a couple of great photos where I think it was Shanny and Stevie and everybody, as we're fighting at center, they're laughing. And then we end up wrestling. We end up falling on top of each other by front of our bench. And Scotty, who is in the back standing, then he comes up to the front and he's leaned over the boards yelling at Patrick Waugh, thinking it was all his fault, that he's created this whole ruckus and somebody might get hurt. Because it was only 3 weeks till the playoffs started, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was April 1st.
Yeah. So it wasn't very long till the playoffs started then. So, Scotty wasn't happy one bit with the fact that all this was going on again. So, but I mean, real cool rivalry. But saying that, not that I want to talk for a while, but the best is the Islanders Rangers. When I went there, unbelievable. I mean, people never talk about that one. It's outstanding. If you ever recommend, go to a game, watch those two teams play.
They beat up Santa Claus one night.
Yeah, the Rangers Islanders game?
Yeah, the Rangers Island. They had a bunch of Santa Claus guys on the ice, people on the ice, and
I know one, haven't you?
Yeah, and it was great. But and you're right, it is outstanding. But this Santa Claus one, an Islander fan took off his Santa Claus sweater, and there was an Islander jersey underneath, and all the Ranger Santa Clauses beat him up.
I remember we were playing the Rangers, and we were like 9-0-1 maybe. So one of the best starts they had. I think they were last place down the year before, and we got smoked by the Rangers at home. And I remember going off the ice there, it was like we'd been on an 8-game losing streak, and the language was unbelievable. I've never heard it like that before. I get abused at home like that, but you can't lose. And that's when I learned. I walk up and I say, "Oh, I guess you can't lose to the Rangers, Snowy." I remember saying that to him. He goes, "Nope. That was the one game that you had to win as an Islander. They didn't care about any other games other than that one."
That's great.
You are a beauty and a true just awesome personality, and we're glad to have you in the goaltender union. Thank you very much for this, and continued success. We love watching you.
Anytime. There's nothing better when 3 goalies get together. A lot of brains and a lot of smarts there.
Yeah.
They don't realize it, but they all want to be around us. You ever notice that? They all gravitate to us.
It just happens naturally, organically. Thanks, Ozzy.
It does.
Thanks,
okay,
Chris.
thanks, guys.
I failed as a host. That was a great interview, awesome interview, and I don't laugh out loud often. I try and restrain because the audio and all that kind of stuff. But he had me busting a couple of times there. But I apologize. You told me to warn people about the audio, that there was a bit of a glitch, and I didn't do it.
And yeah, if anybody should be apologizing, it's me, because it was my fault. We weren't able to grab... Well, it wasn't that we weren't able. We didn't grab Ozzy in person when the Red Wings came through Vancouver, and they only make one visit this year, just because we really wanted to make sure that we had you involved in it, Darren, because you guys do go back and you have that history. And I think that's, I know it's a credit to him and how open he is, but I think part of how open he is because he has that trust and that relationship with you. And the interview was so much better for having you a part of it. Unfortunately, that meant... using some Skype technology that can be limited at times by connections. And so the output audio on Ozzy had a few glitches. That was the downside. The upside is Hutch, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight because he's busy fixing all those glitches. So if it wasn't for Dad cleaning it up, it would be even worse. I do promise our listeners, we're not going to be able to grab every guest in person as we try and expand all the different guys we talk to. It's not always going to be somebody coming through town here in Vancouver or through Vegas where Darren is. And on those occasions, we have actually just started to look into maybe some better technology, some better options, so that the last thing you want to lose is, like that story, the laugh out loud story about the clipboards. I don't want to take any chance of losing that openness and that honesty and those quotes. And so we'll make sure we double down on efforts to clean up the audio when we got to do a phone guest.
The end part where he was like, I don't want to talk. This is his quote. I don't want to keep talking here, but the Rangers and the Islanders, and then he goes on and talks about that story. It was fascinating. And to have somebody, he said at the end, 3 goalies just hanging out, talking hockey. It's that's why people listen to this podcast. That's why you do what you do. That's why I love the invitation to get involved with this. It's it's a really unique environment.
And because of our schedules, and we were trying to balance 3 different schedules, and he's coming on. I mean, they've had a heck of a road trip to start the season, and it wasn't easy. And yet, I know he genuinely enjoyed it because he sent a text after saying how much fun it was. So,
he did?
Yeah. Good. So that's always a good sign. There'll definitely have to be a part 2 with Ozzy, because I think there's a few more stories we could turn over under those rocks. It was great.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I didn't know his brother was a goaltender.
I didn't either.
The part about the jersey drop off where the coach, depending on which route you were. I mean, yeah, gold. 40th episode here.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's almost as old as I am. Like, we're getting there, eh? It's not too bad. We're racking up some good guests. We're keeping it, I hope for our audience it's diverse. We got Carter Hart one week, Chris Osgood the next, guy who hopes to win cups, a guy who's won 3. Got some big names coming through town here in the next couple of weeks. Some of them on back-to-back. So, it might be a little hit and miss but we got Holtby, we got Bob, we got the goalie coaches, Robbie Tallis, Scott Murray. I mean, there are so many more guys that I know the conversations will be ones that our audience will enjoy, that I look forward to having on as guests. And yet, looking back, like, it's been a who's who. It's been just an absolute blast. And I thank everyone for listening in along.
Yeah, Roberto Luongo was still playing in the league when we started.
That's right. First interview ever, appropriately so.
And through 40 episodes, I mean, I was watching a game. Marc-Andre Fleury and Tristan Jarry were in this beautiful goalie duel the other day. And I should be enjoying it for the play on the ice. But all I'm thinking is, what was that story again about Jarry and trying to score and having one waved off or something? Like when we caught up to him at Tendy Fest.
Right.
And just he was there and was nice enough to join us. And there's a cool little not in the same stratosphere as for Roberto Luongo, but just now he's a guy that at that point probably didn't know where things were going with Pittsburgh, and he's on the roster winning games for them.
Yeah, and on the other end of a battle with a Pittsburgh icon in Marc-Andre Fleury. So we talk about small world all the time. The goalie world is even smaller and I think tighter. And I think the conversations, the fact that we're talking about things, and I always say this to guys when I pitch them coming on, it's not about like your start last week or how you're playing right now. It's about the things that tie us together as goaltenders from peewee to pro, whether it's gear, technique, mental side, why we love the game. And I think guys genuinely enjoy those conversations. And so I hope that our audience too has been able to enjoy those conversations as they share those experiences and those thoughts with us.
And I know that we have listeners in Vegas because plenty have come up and tracked me down at T-Mobile Arena and expressed their appreciation. And I also want to give Cam and everybody over at the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Surrey, a big thank you, because they have been with us from the very start, all 40 episodes, and they make it certainly easier to balance these crazy schedules, and they do a wonderful job with you in making sure that the schedules work for the gear segments as well.
Yeah, no, it's couldn't do it without them, and here's to 40 more.
I love it. Chris Osgood, our feature interview today, but the Wizard of Oz, if you want to go down that road for the 40th episode, is David Hutchison, who managed to pull together the interview, and we appreciate Dad's great work in making sure that you could hear the stories from a 3-time Stanley Cup champion. For Kevin Woodley, I'm Darren Millard. Thanks for listening. We'll chat with you next time on InGoal Radio, the podcast.